Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Peter, and in this series of articles on rules, this one's a little bit unusual in that there's nothing in it to do with coaching, there's nothing in it directly to do with rules. This one is about timekeeping. This article belongs in about week 3 before we start attending swim meets. Now, with 3 timekeepers on each lane and no finish judges, who determines the placings and the official times? Well, the answer is that you do, the people who do the timekeeping. And it all depends on when the switch contact is made inside the watch as you press the button. Nothing else. Some might not realise that. I've seen at least one person who seemed to think that you just press the button to let the system know that the swimmer has finished their race, and somehow the system works out what the time was for itself. Well, not so. It's all down to you. Now, here is what to do. You watch the swimmer until they're about 5 metres out from the wall. That is where the backstroke flags are. And then you look down the wall and wait to see something touch the wall. Stop the watch when any part of the swimmer's body touches the wall. Do not anticipate, because the swimmer can miss the wall and have to take another stroke. Do not be concerned whether the touch was within the rules. That's what the technical officials are there for. Now, why do you look down the wall? It's because if you're watching the swimmer and they're doing an alternate arm stroke, whether they're doing crawl stroke, more commonly called freestyle, or whether they're doing backstroke, you won't know which arm is going to hit the wall. If you're watching them, your vision will be switching from side to side, and that's going to get confusing. Now, it may be instinctive to watch the swimmer all the way into the wall, but that's one of the ways to register an inaccurate time. So, we're getting some very variable results because different people have their own ways of doing this. Some will watch the swimmer all the way into the wall. Others will be standing there doing what I said and looking down the wall and waiting for something to hit. Others will be standing back because they don't like feeling crowded and they don't like getting their feet wet. And they go, oh, about now. So we can get some widely varying results. So, yes, looking down the wall means that we're all standing shoulder to shoulder and getting our shoes wet. It's not fun, but I don't know how you can avoid it. So, you can wear your flip-flops or bare feet, are quite okay. Just remember, though, that the concrete can be hot. You may have to walk to the middle of the pool for a 25-metre race or walk to the other end in some cases. Now, that's something else to remember too. If you're at the 25-metre finish in a 50-metre pool, there'll be a rope there. The swimmers do not have to touch the rope. Just stop the watch as though they would have touched an imaginary wall there. Why all this? Let's turn the clock back to get a run-up. There was a time when the standard setup was 2 timekeepers on each lane plus 3 finish judges. The judges determine the placings and the times are adjusted to match if necessary. Some places still do this and it works fine. But these days hardly anyone does accreditations, and finding 3 proficient judges is much more difficult than getting 1 extra timekeeper per lane, which is the alternative option. Judging requires particular aptitudes that not everyone has, and there's now another problem. Pools used to be 6 lanes across. Then we went to 8, and now some have 10. Try being a finish judge for that. The first few will come in somewhere in the middle of the pool. You don't have to move your eyes very far. But then they start to straddle from side to side, and so you're going here, there, somewhere else, and you get lost. Now everyone knows how to use a stopwatch, don't they? Or do they? Not so, according to the semi-automatic electronic timing that we now have in some places. Here is the difficulty with having timekeepers with stopwatches determining the placings and times. Average human reaction time is estimated at about 0.2 of a second. That is 2/10 or 20 hundredths. That is how long it takes from when you see the touch to when the contact is made inside the watch after you press the button. Now, there can be a very wide spread between individuals just inherently, even before we start talking about the differences in style mentioned earlier. But what's the effect on the results? Well, a sprinter's head would be moving forward at about 0.4 of a metre in that 0.2 of a second. That's about 2 handspans, that far. That's their head. Now, if they're doing backstroke or crawl stroke, that leading arm would be moving forward at twice that speed, so about 0.8 of a metre. 2, 4, 6, 8. That far. Now in tight finishes, 2 or 3 swimmers can finish inside that space. Timekeepers have difficulty resolving that difference. Judges could, if we still use them. Judges can easily differentiate between finishes that are only a hand difference apart. But they're gone. Touchpads could almost eliminate the difficulty, but first we'd need a money tree, and then we need a team with the time and expertise to deploy them. And backup manual timekeeping is still required. Now, how we're finding out about all this is that the automatic electronic timing that we're using rejects times from the same lane that are more than 0.3 of a second apart. Remember that your reaction time is 0.2, so it's only a bit more than that. And another thing, never use one of these to time another lane. Each handset is dedicated to a lane, so the computer would think there's been a finish in that lane. Only ever press the button on one of these things at the finish. Pressing any buttons at any other time just confuses the timing system. On this Dolphin timing system that we have here, there's also a cancel button. I'm not an expert on the Dolphin, but I gather that you can press the cancel button once the swimmers have gone about 10 metres after a start. You don't have to because the system will be reset when the starter press is reset on the start unit to signify the end of the race. Certainly do not touch the cancel button before the start. Don't do that. You might think you could do that if you know you don't have a swimmer and you're just going to cancel it. Wait until after the start. Now, timekeepers are officials too, and so impartiality is essential. If you want to use your own stopwatch to time a swimmer, do that from the sideline, not while you are actually doing timekeeping as an official. During the race and while you're taking times, concentrate only on the swimmer in your lane. These stopwatches that you can buy now usually have multiple functions on them. Keep it in stopwatch mode. There's usually a third button. You should never have to touch that. If you inadvertently hit that, you might put it into date and time mode or alarm mode. So leave the middle button alone. Button A here is for starting and stopping. Button B is reset. But it can also do something else. These sorts of timepieces are also used for games like basketball, for example, where they use a timeout function. Now, if you inadvertently hit the reset button at the finish of the race, that'll, depending on how it's set up, that'll usually put it into timeout mode. Copy down the time you got, and then start it again by pressing that reset button. Then stop it using the stop button, then you can reset. If you've gone into timeout mode and you try to set it by resetting the reset button, it'll just start running again. That might confuse you if you don't know what it's done. So I'll just say that again. If you have stopped your watch by pressing the reset button, copy down the time, press reset again, that'll set it running again, stop it normally, and then you can reset. Now, I can't resist the opportunity to do some ranting, but first let me remind you what to do. If you remember just one thing, this is what to do. You can watch the swimmer up until they're about 5 metres out from the wall. As they go under the backstroke flags, look down the wall and wait to see something touch the wall. Hit that stop button the moment you see something touch the wall. If you remember nothing else, remember to do that. Now, these things are not toys. Do not let the kids play with them. If you want your child to play with a stopwatch, you buy them one. In particular, the handsets for the electronic timing are very expensive. Now, when you are timekeeping, this lanyard has a purpose. That's to keep you connected to the clock and the clock connected to you, so it doesn't end up on the concrete. You can hang it round your neck. That way you can have both hands free most of the time. That'll keep it safe. You can wrap it round your wrist. That'll keep it safe. The lanyard is not for swinging it around by when you get a bit bored, because the number of times I've seen these go astray and end up on the concrete. I should know, because I used to change the batteries in these, and I would spend as much time repairing switches as I did replacing batteries, because you let one of these go, it's very likely to land on a switch. So keep it safe, keep it round your neck, round your wrist. Now, I keep saying I like to get a run up, so this is what we used to have long ago, mechanical watches before we got the digital ones. Mechanical watches, they had one button at the top: start, stop, reset. And we were trained to actuate that using our index finger. Start, stop, reset. This one's old, it doesn't work anymore. Think about why we were told to do that. What is your most sensitive and responsive finger? It's going to be the index finger on your dominant hand. The thumb that we have is really only meant for grasping the opposite side of something. It's the fingers that have all the dexterity. So, question: why, for right-handers, do these have the start-stop button under the thumb? I have to come up with a conspiracy theory. See, I reckon people watch too many movies. It's all for entertainment, it's all for drama. So I imagine probably something like this happened. In a movie, they're at the racetrack, the driver's going around the circuit. At the control point, they got a stopwatch, seeing what his lap time is. No one ever taught them to use their index finger. It's much more dramatic to have your thumb on it. Here he comes, is he going to make the time? They hit the stop button with their thumb. Unfortunately, populism has overtaken everything, and that's how the stop buttons on the digital watches have ended up under the thumb. if I want to use one of these, are right for left-handers, by the way. If I want to use one of these, I use it in the left hand. Start stop button under the index finger. Sometimes I'll turn it upside down so that I'm using my index finger on the start button on the right hand. But, you know, that's all a bit quirky. We're stuck with that, I'm afraid. You know, your timekeepers at the end of the pool are going to be doing this. I don't like it, but, you know, there we have it. The triumph of populism, the triumph of the ordinary, compulsory mediocrity, it's everywhere. I wish I had a better note to end on. Anyway, remember your advice. One good thing about this is the timekeepers get really excited when two of them get the same time to the nearest 100th. And I reckon that's great. So until the next one,